What is the meaning of life? I ask you again. Yes, again, because I think the previous video, just from another day video, is the same question I posed to you. And then I gave you my own answer. And I used astrology and talked about astrology and how astrology supports my answer. Rather, it's one way of me finding out the answer for myself. And today I want to talk about that topic again. This time I want to use a different astrological lens to contemplate and to share with you how I work with astrology to make sense of life, which is what this whole channel is about. So hello, my name is Maya. I'm your astrology crone, and I share life wisdom that are lived astrologically. So the wisdom of my life that are lived astrologically. And if that sounds interesting and exciting, then you might want to stick around and subscribe and share my content. So welcome if you're new, and welcome back if you are my fans from a longer time, from my earlier days, right? Okay, so today the last video was about Pluto. This video is going to be about mutable cross and how that particular astrological lens answers the question, what's the meaning of life. And then any future ones I will be probably creating will also be linked all below for your ease of reference, so you can have them all in one place. So, mutable cross. Mutable cross. Well, actually, before we go there, sorry, I should really remind you my answer, because my answer is that's the answer that I have found over decades of asking this question, and then over decades of using astrology to make sense of the world. So my answer is that the meaning of life is to experience ourselves fully, truly, and deeply. And that is all. So the meaning is to be who we are. That is the point of life, and that is how we make meaning. And that is how we live meaningfully, right? So that's why it's the meaning of life. That's the whole point. And as we experience all of ourselves, as we go through life, we keep experiencing new parts of ourselves. We keep filling ourselves out or in, not sure. So we are expanding our sense of self as the life goes on, and we have more and more experiences. And so in a way, the destination of our life is, if there is such a word, which I hardly ever use, but I will here, is that to become whole. And which is the individuation that Carl Jung talks about, that is in all of us. It's programmed genetically. We are going towards that. Some of us are faster. So we are all on different parts of that journey, different levels, different stages. But that's where we're all headed. We're headed to this destination where we are whole. We have exhausted all the experiences. We have experienced all there is to experience. Of being a human in our bodies and identities and personalities. And that's the end goal. That is the destination. And after that, we don't come back reincarnating. So I talked about that in my previous video. And in that last video, I was using Pluto. I was talking about that question and answering it through the lens of Pluto and evolution. But today I want to focus on a different lens, which is the mutable cross, to discuss the same question and arrive at the same or similar answer. So what is a mutable cross? Mutable cross is the signs that are the houses and the signs, which is kind of the same thing in certainly how I speak of astrology. So Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius and Pisces, they're the signs and the houses that come before the cardinal signs, the signs that act on what mutables do for them. And so, and as the name suggests, they go from fixed, so comes Taurus, then Gemini, then Cancer, and then again fixed Leo, Virgo, mutable, and then cardinal Libra, etc. And the idea of this is that the mutable sign is the one that does something different, that changes, mutates, so that the cardinal can actually act on something new. So the mutables are the activators of change. They're the initiators. They're the ones that are seeking curiously, as in with curiosity, new experiences, like something different, something that is not that, to move away from the fixed, right? Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, to move away from that, because that's what fixed signs do. They have fixed it, they have made it solid and stable and stationed. But the mutable comes and goes, let's rip this up, let's shake this up, let's loosen this up. And they don't care what the cardinal is going to do afterwards, as in Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, and Aries. They don't care, because all they want is the experience. Because once you get into the cardinal, they are definitely after that. They're in the experience that is, but they're driven. They're moving towards the fixed, right? So they're driven to make something, to solidify, essentially, to give it form enough, like initiate the spark of the chosen one thing, that then fixed signs will then fix and stabilize and do something more with it. So the mutables are there to do what experiences, if you think of us seeking new experiences, is what the mutable is. So it's like you want to just, you desire or need to change rooms, like you just, your experience needs to change, like you're just feeling too stale, fixed in a room, in a particular life, even, job. And so you want to change, you want to shift that. And so you shift, right? But the shift, once you shifted, you're in that cardinal stage of, like, you're in this new place. But it's the movement in between the worlds, in between the fixed and the cardinal, that the mutables reside. So what's the relevance to the meaning making? 4 signs, right, are all about language. And language is how we make meaning and how we make sense of the world around us. So I use astrology language, and it's always a language. But there is actually nuance to this, and I'll talk about it in a moment. But let me just remind you, I'm sure I said it at the beginning, hopefully I did, right, what the mutables are. So it's Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. So Gemini and Virgo both are ruled by Mercury. And Mercury is the archetype of language and communication, and of knowledge, like, which is another way of making meaning, right? We have some knowledge in that because we decide that something means something, and we are happy with that, and we claim that we know it, and that's how we make meaning, right? So Mercury is the archetype of these functions of our human experience, right? Sagittarius is Jupiter, rather ruled by Jupiter. That's what I mean by, Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. Jupiter is, like I say, rules Sagittarius, the 3rd mutable sign, which is also about language, and I'll explain in a moment how and why. And then Pisces, the final mutable sign on the mutable cross, right, is ruled by Neptune. And if you go by the old traditional Hellenistic astrology, it's ruled by Jupiter, but I work with modern rulers, except for Saturn and Pluto, and Scorpio, rather, Mars, Saturn and Mars. But yeah, so we have Mercury, Jupiter, and Neptune. And the 3, even though they stand for 4, because, Mercury covers 2, right? They show the progression of how we make meaning. That's why the mutable cross is a wonderful way of understanding how astrology, or rather understanding the question, or finding the answer to the question of what is the meaning of life. And another nuanced version of that question is how we make meaning. How do we make meaning? Is to look at the mutable cross. So Mercury in both of these signs is different. Mercury in Gemini is different to Mercury in Virgo. And again, it's that hierarchical, or the sequential, procedural, no, let's call it sequential, because it's sequence. So like first step, second step, third and fourth step, as we get closer and closer to the truth. So Mercury in Gemini is about data gathering. It's the archetype of the curious. It's a Bugs Bunny. It's someone who, curiosity killed a cat would be a metaphor or a symbol, adequate symbol for Gemini archetype, and therefore Mercury that rules Gemini, the Gemini Mercury. And it's all about just like being fascinated by the reality of 3D that we experience, or even 4D or whatever, right? Whatever one is experiencing, and it's curious to gather the information. It's like, look at that, and then look at this, and look at that, and what is that? And it's the purpose of Mercury in Gemini, or the Mercury that rules Gemini, or Gemini as the first step on the meaning-making axis of the mutable, cross, is to gather information. And then we move to Virgo, which is a very different Mercury. It's an Earth Mercury. The other one was air. So you always, if you think of that in those terms, you always get a really good sense of an archetype. So if the Mercury that rules Gemini is an air Mercury, and air is, you can imagine, just like shape-shifting, the ultimate shape-shifter, as in like literally can disappear, meaning you can, you don't see it in that sense disappear. So that's, like I said, that's that. Already talked about that. And then we go to Mercury in Mercury that rules Virgo. So that's an earth sign. So that Mercury is far more methodical, far more grounded, far more practical, far more specific, because earth is all those things. Like you can, it's specimen of something and it's specific. You can pinpoint it, right? It's like a grain of earth, right? So that Mercury is all about organizing and discernment. It's about, so all this data that has come from Mercury in Gemini, or Gemini part of the mutable cross, right, has come now to, the data has all come to Virgo, and it's huge. It's just like a pile of data, because Gemini has just like had the best time in their life, just ping-ponging around the world and just go, and that, and totally unrelatable, totally not coherently put together, right? But it comes to Virgo, and Virgo does that job. So Virgo makes that sense, logical sense of that data gathered by Gemini. And this discernment, one of the great sayings that I love to use for Virgo is that sorting wheat from the chaff. I think that's the pronunciation, which is like deciding what's useful, what's not useful, what's relevant, what's not relevant. And that Virgo loves that job, as in and Mercury by definition, the Mercury that rules Virgo. And it's, like I say, so it's sorting that data to put order into what seems like chaos. But the chaos piece is like any beginning. Whoever is at the beginning is what all they know. So for them, chaos is the norm, is like the way to be. So Gemini Mercury is chaotic. And I think the word is, hold on, let me think. Scatterbrain. I have Mercury in Gemini, and you can see how I speak here. It's just I cannot, like, I just have my tangential way, speaking, and some people like get it completely, some don't. Hopefully, if you're here, I imagine you do get it. Anyway, so it's that chaotic scatterbrain kind of communication style. But it's not even just communication style, it's the way of thinking and seeing the world. And it's, for me, it's just perfect. I love it, like, because I have Mercury in Gemini. My brother has Mercury in Virgo, and we clash. Like, we are both smart and quick. Like, we get each other, but he finds me just chaotic, and I find him too methodical, too precise. And I'm like, I don't care that it's, blah, blah, right? So the chaos is at the beginning of the mutable cross is Gemini, and then it moves to Virgo, where some order, or in fact, the most amazing, the most perfect order a human can put is put by Virgo onto the chaos that came from data gathering by Gemini. And that now gets to Sagittarius. Now, we are changing rulers. It's not anymore Mercury story. So it's not language, the logic. So the Mercury is the mind. It's the language as we speak it, like as in the logical, the direct kind of contact from, or rather route from mind to words. as a way of identifying the world. It's kind of dry, right? It's kind of scientific, maybe is another word you can use. We get to Jupiter, and we are in a very different realm. Now, Jupiter is very much about language, but it's a very different kind of language. And Jupiter is actually, so the Jupiter and Sagittarius, so when I say Jupiter, I mean Sagittarius, meaning the two are the mutable, part of the mutable cross, because Jupiter rules Sagittarius. So by the time we get to Sagittarius, we have left, the logic has done its job. We have moved through other signs, right? We have Libra, and we have met the other people. So Libra is 7th house, other people, 8th house. Scorpio is other people more intensely and intimately and mergingly. And then we get to Sagittarius and Jupiter. And after that, because each of these signs, it's part of a picture, right? Bigger picture. So it's like they have their own story, not in isolation ever. They're always a continuation from something before, and what their purpose is defined, their function is defined, their meaning is defined by what where they're going, as well as where they come from, right? So Sagittarius is on the back of those two other signs. We will introduce the other, and that's where that logic doesn't work anymore, because we cannot, it doesn't translate. And there is a video, or rather presentation of mine that is one of my favorite things I've ever done, is on the crisis of meaning, and it's to do with Pluto-Saturn conjunction and COVID and all kinds of other stuff that I'll link below. And if you're fascinated and if you're enjoying this talk, you will love that. And so we get to Sagittarius, like I say, and we leave behind the Mercury function of our meaning-making faculties, right? And we enter the realm of the expansive adventurer, which is Sag and Jupiter. But the key to remember is that it comes on the back of first time encountering other and realizing how unreliable that logic is, because it never translates directly. Because I think it's Kafka. Well, I know it's Kafka. I think it goes, a language is all but, yeah, I'm pretty sure. All language is poor translation. Yeah, maybe that's the message. That's the message. I may have been putting the words in different order, but that's the message. So the language is basically just a translation of something. And whenever you translate, things get lost in translation. And I know I'm a bilingual, trilingual even, and whatever. And today everyone is at least bilingual, I imagine, unless you're English speaking, maybe in that case not. Anyway, and so definitely things get lost in translation. Just do, right? And it's the reason that do is because of Jupiter, because of Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, amongst other things, is also other cultures. Like, so as if Gemini is like your most immediate neighborhood, which is also, amongst other things, like your native land, where you come from, where you share the culture and customs and just the language, right? So if you're born in a country like, let's say, England, that would be your Gemini things. But if you then move to go to America or France or Italy, whether it's the same language or not, even if it is, as you all know, I'm sure that, American English and Australian English and any other English is all different. Similar enough, but still different. So when we get to Sagittarius and Jupiter, we are in another country. And so that is partly why that's a metaphor for the for the unreliableness of language to communicate meaning, my meaning to you, for you to understand exactly what I mean, right? So because we're in a different culture, but also it's a metaphor for the human differences, which is partly down to different cultures, or maybe even totally down to different cultures. And when I say cultures, I don't just mean your national cultural, literally cultural background, but actually culture just as something that you have cultivated around yourself and became your culture. Like you have plants and mushrooms and all the kind of gardening kind of cultures, or labs. They create cultures. You know what I mean. I'm sure you know what I mean. So culture is just something that we have cultivated as our sense of, and infused it with our meaning. but it's ours, and no one else can know it as well as we do, and as clearly and precisely as we do. And so that is frustrating to Virgo and Gemini Mercury function, but when we get to Jupiter, it isn't. It's actually the way of the world. It's a natural law, and it's okay. And so, back to language and meaning making, the way Sagittarius makes meaning versus what I just talked about, Gemini and Virgo, is by storytelling. So remember I said at one point earlier that it's a bridge. Jupiter and Sag are the bridge between Pisces and the other two for a specific reason, which is because we left logic, for the first time we're realizing that actually language is slippery, and it's a shapeshifter, it's a trickster archetype, and actually Gemini is very much a trickster archetype. Possibly even Virgo, although I don't speak of Virgo like that, but I'm going to be considering this actually going forward. But and then we get to in fact, all mutable signs are trickstery nature, because they're shapeshifters, they change, they're mutable. That's it in essence, basically. But Virgo is the earth, so it's probably the least noticeably so changeable, right? And so we get to Sag and Jupiter, and we tell stories, because in telling stories, first we acknowledge that it's just a story. So it's not a truth, it's not logic, it's not science, right? And in doing so, we allow for misunderstandings, or rather more importantly, if we are looking at life as a beautiful, wonderful experience in all its glory and ugliness and everything in between, it allows for interpretation, different interpretations. Which, if you're taking it all personally, if you're like stuck in the Mercury science mind, logic mind, then it feels like a misinterpretation, and personally, you feel personally affronted. But if you are healthily living in your Sag Jupiter part of the mutable cross, then you are very comfortable that this is all a story we're telling each other, and therefore, the truth is very relative, and my truth is not your truth, and today's truth is not tomorrow's truth, mine or anyone else's, right? So it's up for grabs. The meaning is up for grabs, and that's the beauty. We play with it. It's like interactive, and so if you think of Sag is adventurous, Sag is positive, Sag is expansive, Sag is the most fun to be with. Even, well, I don't know if it's even more than with Gemini. It's a different kind of fun. No, it's not more, because I adore Gemini. But just as an archetype, and not every single person I met. Whenever I say this, I always mean just as an archetype, not a person, sun sign or anything. But just, I know the energy of Gemini is just such fun. It's just the Bugs Bunny. But yeah, so Sag is, like I say, a storyteller. And the fibber, but fibber in the sense of like embellishing, not as a way of tricking you, beyond maybe kind of like a Baba Yaga kind of trickery of like, so that if you think of a hero's journey, so that you are tested. So, like a benevolent kind of trickery, where you are misguided so that you fall, so that you have a chance to do something that's glorious and amazing, and, therefore it's a great happy ending, yeah? So it bridges. So the fourth one is Pisces. Now that is like, I mean, just, you can hear in my voice, it's a different world. It's like beyond the world. And more importantly for this conversation about, this is a long one. Okay, I'll be wrapping up. Is about beyond language. So in Sag and Jupiter, we've done storytelling. When we get to Pisces, we enter the realm of poetry and art, where imagination reigns, and truth is, the only rule is that truth is relative. As per us humans, there is the truth, but it's mostly to us mortals unattainable, or rather, it's not unattainable, and it is. Certainly it's unattainable in language, except by poetry and art. And if you think of poetry, it's like it's like nonsensical. How often, which is why it's not probably the most popular thing in the world, unless it's part of music. So that's also how Pisces and Neptune bring you meaning in a way that's palatable, that is not too confusing, because meaning is ultimately elusive. It's like it is just the experience. So back to the mutable cross, and this whole answer of mine, and maybe yours if you are following me and listening to all of this and agreeing with me and seeing my point, is that it's all about just the experience with no destination in terms of definition, in terms of understanding, in terms of certainty, in terms of logic. None of it. It's just the experience that only you are the ultimate interpreter for yourself. And sure, you will be sharing it and exchanging it, your story with other people. But remember where you are on this axis of the mutable cross. If you're in the storytelling, just remember it's storytelling. So you're sharing a beautiful story, like I shared in my other videos or whatever, and will in the future. It's like a story. It's not science. It's not, don't hold me to some scientific standard of some kind of precision or accuracy in terms of, I don't know, your take on what I'm sharing. It's my story, right? And so your story the same. So where are you on this axis? There is value and necessity to get to be in the logic and the Mercury part of this axis and meaning making, but we absolutely have to get to the story as well and then allow ourselves to live in the Pisces realm of poetry and imagination in terms of art and music, where it's even less understandable and sensical in the logic sense of that word. And that is the truth. That is the truth. I believe that Pisces tells us that there isn't a meaning that you can hang on to for dear life for the rest of your life. The only certainty is in that in-between space, in the mutable energies of like in-between, really. I mean, sure, we have the rest of the chart with fixed and cardinal, but when it comes to meaning making, this is so important. That's the axis of meaning making. Every other part of your chart makes meaning in certain area of your life. But this is the motor, if you like, MOTOR, like the engine of meaning making. It's the mechanism of meaning making, right? So that's at the root of how we make sense of the world. And which is, if you think about it, why we so hang on to for dear life, that, we want certainty and we want definitions and we want, clear YouTube videos with very clear instructions of how to do this and how to do that. Yeah, sure. And, there are many now. We'll have some as well like that, and I'll have books like that or whatever, right? But there is time and place for that. And then there is time and place for having a far more fluid and open and elusive. Can you accept that that's the meaning? The meaning is elusive. The meaning is in the experience only, that you cannot catch and capture forever. You can. In fact, that's part of how you create legacy. But it will be a reduction. It will be a segment. Your experience will probably, in fact, for sure, I would vouch, I would bet, don't hold me to it, but I would risk it to bet that it's just uncapturable, like in terms of its precision. So that you feel like how you have captured it, and then someone comes along and reads it, sees it, whatever, experiences it, and they tell you and they share their enthusiasm or criticism or something in between, right? About their experience of what you shared and how you communicated the meaning that you have created for yourself, and you go, that's not what I meant. Or even if a lot of it you think it is what you meant, I know, certainly for me, and again, as I always say, from what I observed for this 54 years of my life, is that we all have that. So there is that surface level of understanding, and then there is like underneath, there is like this whole, like an iceberg piece where it goes, no, you didn't get that. You got that, but it's like there, right? You got something, but there's so much more that they didn't. And so when that happens in real life, this is where astrology comes in, and it's beautiful. It's like you have to remember, when it comes to meaning making, remember the four mutables and remember the ultimate Pisces, meaning wherever on the axis you are, whether you're in logic, whether you're in sorting and organizing, whether you're in storytelling or this, imagination, elusive, slippery meaning, elusive, basically, you cannot capture it. You cannot really feel like you're being seen and understood the way you see yourself and understand yourself. So all of these four different points are always present. So Gemini is very much aware of the Pisces piece, and that's why Gemini is a trickster. That's why they're all tricksters, because he knows the truth. It's not his thing. He's not really that curious about it. I mean, he is, but he's not interested to kind of, he doesn't live there, goes, visits and picks maybe something up, and it still just kind of gives it a name, knowing that so he does his logic piece, he puts that label on a Piscean piece, knowing, Gemini knows that it's a job poorly done, job poorly done, right? Because it's impossible to do a better job. But he's happy to do a poor job. And if you're a Gemini, or if you know I'm talking about signs, sun signs, and I have known, and I have in my life a few, and I have known so many in my life, they have this bad reputation that they don't do a great job. They kind of leave it half done. It's never really perfect, a la Virgo or whatever, right? Solid or something like Capricorn or blah blah. And it's because they know. It's almost like, what's the point? It's like me trying to make it something definite and certain, when really I know, because, like I say, every point on the cross is aware of the rest of it, because that's just the nature doesn't exist in vacuum. Therefore, the child doesn't exist in vacuum and in isolation. So and particularly those ones, share the language. They get the whole point of language. All four share the language as their function, as their purpose, as their at the heart of what they are here to do. Their purpose for us. Those four archetypes on this cross. So that's what they get about each other. They also know that they're doing separate jobs, but they know that they're able and happy to do their part of the job, because the other three are doing the rest. So as a cross, mutable cross, they're doing a grand job of continually giving us a full experience. That's the whole point. That's the only meaning of life, of ourselves, and it's up to us. Hence why astrology is phenomenal and beautiful. Just like a quick reference point, it's like, how am I making sense of this? How am I communicating this? What's my experience of making meaning out of this? And just remember the whole full points and where you're at. And therefore, if you're too much in one, remember there is the other three. Fine, be in that one, but just remember, right? And that takes some pressure away. That takes some anxiety away. Okay, this is a very long one. Oh my God, but I think I was on the roll. And okay, any questions, as always, please let me know in the comments. If you want me to expand or clarify anything that I've been saying here, please let me know. I'd love to do that for you. I'd love to create content that you'll find useful. Okay, till next time, have a great week.